Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. This was going to be nice, small, and intimate. This is going to be recorded and then posted up on YouTube. And I wanted to take a little different perspective on leadership today. I think a lot of times we get people that want to teach and coach and talk about leadership, and it always seems to be the leader that gets to talk. That kind of annoys me. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to honor and respect that when we talk about leadership, there is another perspective. There's the people who are being asked to accept that leadership. There are people that are being led. And with that, I've got my good friend Chrixy online here with me today. And Chrixy is someone that I respect and hold in very, very high regard. And Chrixy, how long have we been working together now?
We just started working December, but it feels like a long time.
I know, I'm hard to work with, I get it. So the reason why I think that's important and why that's relevant is what you're about to experience today is a lot of people have seen some different videos with me where I've done different talks about leadership, or they've seen my example of leadership, but it's usually with people that I've been working with for years. And sometimes you got to take that with a grain of salt, because even whether I was a good or bad leader, we just kind of know each other's quirks, okay? And there's something to that. Chrixy's just getting to know me. And God bless her little soul for the last 7 months, as it's been a ride and a half, I'm sure, for her. And I apologize that you have to work with me every day. It's a lot of Breckheimer for anybody. But here's the thing is I wanted to be able to give a little bit of my perspective and what my core principles are around leadership. But I really wanted, and I had asked Chrixy, and she said, well, maybe I'll do 10 minutes. And I'm like, oh no, the more Chrixy, the better. So I'm asking Chrixy to give her perspective on a few things. So a few things that I'm gonna start with, Chrixy. We didn't really format this, and that was intentional. I didn't want her to know everything I was gonna talk about. And I certainly don't want to know everything you're going to talk about. I want to enjoy this with everybody else as well. And I want to be able to take this really for what you have to share. So I wanted to share a couple core concepts before we get started, though, and ask Chrixy to share with us. The first concept that I want to share in this is I really worry less about leading, and I worry more about empowering. And that's something that is very important to me, is if I want to lead and I want the best out of someone, is I'm not thinking about how do I lead them and how do I get them to do what I want them to do. I want to figure out what do I have to do to help them feel empowered. I want them to wake up and they absolutely don't feel that they're coming to work for a task doer. They don't have tasks to do in my organizations. They have areas of my business that I treat them as though they own those areas, so they can wake up with a little more pride. They're empowered to actually feel like they own that part of my business. And I'm hardcore about pushing that part of it. I want them to have pride in that, okay? I think they wake up different and they show up different if they're just waiting to come in and go, what's Breckheimer's task list today? And Chrixy knows I don't work that way, okay? And so that is something that I just wanted to just point out is, and I'll be curious what Chrixy has to share about her perspective on that. But the fact is that my mindset, so notice what we're talking about first is, it's not even just about a style. It's about my mindset needs to be right before I even determine how I'm going to lead. And the first thing in my mindset is I don't worry about leading. I worry about empowering. That's where my focus is. So that's what I kind of wanted to bring in first and foremost. The second thing, and Julie, I love that you're on this call. And here's one reason why is we weren't recording this before, but Julie, what was the organization that you work for again?
Global Volunteers.
Okay, so with Global Volunteers, let's just use the word culture. You get to visit a lot of different cultures, okay? Now, Chrixy, you live in the Philippines. Again, another culture. When we talk about cultures, one of the things that comes to mind for me and is close to my heart is I believe that a core foundation of any culture is that every culture has a language. Language matters. Hardcore, it matters, okay? And so I'm very curious what Chrixy has to share today, but Chrixy knows that I'm very purposeful about language in everything that we do. We don't talk about what are we going to do. We talk about what we're going to own, okay? if anybody really wants to annoy me real quick, is all they have to do is go, and these are the questions, I get this on a regular basis, is, hey, David, I'm thinking about hiring a VA. And they know that I work with a lot of VAs, and they know that I've worked with dozens of VAs in the Philippines and all this other kind of stuff. And here's why I get annoyed, because immediately they go, so what tasks do you have your VA do? First of all, they're not task doers. I'm hiring human beings with real talent. I'm not hiring them to do tasks. I am going to figure out what is the role I'm trying to fulfill, and I'm going to build a role just like I would for someone that I would hire down the street. We're talking about roles, not tasks. So just that verbiage different makes me think differently. Am I hiring someone just to be my servant, or am I hiring someone to be my partner? So that would be the next phrase. I'm so annoyed with the idea of just using VA as a general term that, Chrixy, you've just about never heard me call you a VA. What do I call you?
Business partner.
100%
Yes.
all the time, okay? Chrixy is my creative partner. She's not my VA. That language difference puts me in a different frame of mind when I'm talking to her and when I'm asking things of her and when we're working together. She's not my VA, she's my creative partner. So language such as task doer versus ownership, okay? VA versus partner. And I wanted it that so ingrained in her that I thought of her and see her as my partner, that I make sure. I could have just said, social media manager or creative manager or anything else like that. I could have said VA. I could have said social media manager. Give me a break. I want her to know how I see her and how I'm pushing myself to bring my best self forward, to treat her with the level of respect that she deserves. So I made sure that that went in her title, because now it's thrown in my face all the time, how I'm supposed to be looking at her. So notice I'm not, as a leader, even just challenging the people that are following me or that are working with me or any other term that any other leader wants to use. I challenge myself as a leader more than I'm challenging anybody else who has agreed to work within my team structure. Okay. So that language is something I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about one last piece of language here, though. And mainly this was not going to be part of this talk, but it's come up in a number of my coaching calls this week. I've had at least 3 coaching clients that have used this phrase, is, you know what, we're going to do as a team whatever it takes to get it done. And I'm always going to pull more out of them. And I'm going to say, okay, so as a leader, when you hear that from your team, or you expect that out of your team, what does that mean to you? And I will keep pushing, and I will keep digging farther, and I'll keep digging farther. And as a leader, their core concept is we promise this to the customer, and we will work until we can get it done. And if that means that we got to work extra nights, we got to work weekends, okay, stop right there. If you're my leader, I have no interest in working with you. I'm going to give you the best I got in 40 hours. How about we ask a different question and we use a different verbiage? Okay, this is what we need to get done. How do we do that within 40 hours? If we can't get it done within 40 hours, are we possibly unrealistic with our timelines of what it takes to get that done? Versus we're just going to do as a team whatever it takes, and we know that everybody is going to have to put a little extra in. And they actually, the way they've been talking to me this week, 3 of those clients, they're taking it almost as a badge of honor. It's almost a badge of honor that we will do whatever it takes to get it done. And my team will work extra nights and extra weekends to get it done. Really? Okay. I would challenge you as a leader to look at that and say, what are we trying to get done? Have you even asked, is there any way that we could maybe take a look at that? And who on the team has some creative ideas to be able to do that more effectively and more efficiently? Anybody who knows me, I build everything in our business based on a core principle of a 5x5. Everything must be scalable, duplicatable, freakishly predictable, effective, and efficient. And everything that we produce must create for ourselves and everyone we interact with peace, contentment, joy, and be fully informed by gratitude and compassion. Lindsay, I know you've heard those 5x5s till you're blue in the face. Okay, we've talked about that stuff a lot. So if those 5x5 are my core principle, one of them was efficient and effective. So I'm going to say, okay, is there any way that we can do that more efficiently and we get that within 40 hours? If we can't do that within 40 hours, is possibly our timeline unrealistic? Versus we're just going to do whatever it takes. And now I'm asking my team, as a leader, I'm asking them to put their family aside. I'm asking them to put their personal situations aside. Sometimes our team members, they will do that for us, okay? I don't see that as a good thing. I think sometimes we end up working with team members, and I just want to propose this to anybody working with a team. The problem with working with a team, especially if we've worked together long enough, is that we learn to love each other. Why is that a problem? It's a major problem for me, because when we know that we love each other, and I love the people I work with and they love me back, we know that they will accommodate us. Because of that love, sometimes they will accommodate us, and sometimes we'll accept that accommodation. And as a leader, I would put yourself in check to know that your people love you and they may be willing to accommodate you when you ask for extras. So I would challenge you as a leader, is that really the direction that you want to go? Is that how you want to handle the love that you are receiving and the respect that you are receiving? Okay, so just a thought, just a thought. So Chrixy, I'm hardcore more curious about hearing you today than me. So I do see this video as a very, very different perspective than what I have done with a lot of other people. And the reason why, like we just mentioned, a lot of these videos that I've done and any dialogue and bouncing back and forth with someone I know real well, and we've been working together for years and years and years. And so you have a very fresh perspective working with me. What did you want to share today? How do you see leadership from your perspective?
Before I start, are you hearing the crazy rain outside? It's why I'm muting. Okay.
No,
Perfect.
not at all. Not at all.
I didn't want you to get distracted by the rain. It's raining crazy for the past few days here in the Philippines. So if you're talking about culture, it's really different from all sides of the world. Well, going back to the point that David has been sharing, I think to give you a little bit of context, I've been working as a virtual assistant for more or less 5, 6, 7 years. I started as a part-time marketing person. So I've handled like a lot of different tasks. So that was my mindset before I met David. I handled a lot of tasks, I handled a lot of roles, and I'm basically called a virtual assistant, a marketing assistant, and even an executive assistant. So I've had different titles for the past few years. And when I started working as a virtual assistant, my goal was actually to find a client that will trust me enough to give me like freedom on when I can work, or like sometimes offset and prioritize my tasks, because as a creative person, my niche is basically in marketing, and it's all about creativity. And I think and I believe that even the best of the best need to be in the proper mindset when we're creating outputs in the marketing side of things. So I really wanted to find a client that trusted me enough to give me the flexibility. And when I found David, I always tell him that his impact hasn't just been in my professional life, but also in my personal life. So now I'm very confident of calling David my business partner. And if you asked me that a few months ago, I wouldn't have had that confidence. So right now I'm saying that I finally found a business partner that trusted me enough and understood what I'm working on. And one of the things that I think is like the best output of this mindset is that I own my responsibility as a creative director. Since I have the freedom, I know I have the accountability to finish it beforehand or before the deadline. And it makes me even more excited to work. It makes me even more productive because I know I can handle my time. But at the same time, I'm so excited because I know I have a role in the business. So it's basically saying that I'm taking part in growing the business.
Yeah.
And that really empowers me to be more productive. And at the same time, since I'm basically a part of the business, I feel like I need and I own it to our clients, to our network, to the people we're working with, to give the highest value I can give. So when we're saying leadership and empowering, it's not just for the team, it also trickles down to the people that we're working with and to the people in the network. So for me and my perspective, that changed a lot in how I work. So there's still a lot more to share, and I don't want to get ahead of myself. So I'm stopping myself there. But before we go to the next point, I just want to share. Whenever I message David on a weekend, his first reaction is he's very disappointed because I messaged him on a weekend because he thinks that I'm working on a weekend. And at first, there were some updates that I wanted to share with him. But eventually, when I learned his personality and I got how he thinks, I started sharing some family photos of how I'm spending my weekend. And I feel like he's doing a victory dance whenever I send him photos of my family. So that's how we're working now. I'm very confident. I'm owning the business, and at the same time, I found a friend far away from home. So it's really cool to be empowered in it.
I love it. I love it. And yes, I would absolutely chastise you because I thought you were actually doing work on the weekend, which annoys me to no end. So yes. All right. So what else was important to you from a leadership perspective? I'm going to say that one thing, because I didn't really know exactly what you were going to share there. The thing that struck me, because I don't hear this from you, so to hear this right now was kind of a revelation to me. I actually, and I don't think of it, I guess, but I guess I have heard other virtual assistants say this, is my client. I've worked for this many clients, what I do for my clients and everything else like that. That verbiage and that language alone versus you and I talk about partnership all the time. I mean, that's just, we don't even think about it. I mean, that's just part of our verbiage at this point. But for you to say, I was looking for a client that I could work for, that's an interesting perspective, just that language by itself. So that was interesting for me to hear personally. So,
well, and in all honesty, I'm kind of a person who already established a little bit of confidence in this industry. So there are a lot more people who are feeling inferior, especially in the virtual assistant industry. So I really like how we're building a culture that mindset matters, that language matters, because being empowered as a virtual professional really means a lot in terms of improving the industry and the value we provide for the businesses, even if we're like digitally connected and not physically meeting. So
so
go
something
ahead.
you just pulled out of there, because it's just interesting for me to even hear you talk, because the words that you are using are having impact on me. The fact that you also are recognizing that part of what we are, not just what we're trying, but what we are creating for the team our own internal culture. And we determine what that culture is going to be. That's not by accident. It's not haphazard. We're freakishly over the top purposeful about it. We're over the top purposeful about it. And I love that you see that, and that is in your verbiage as well already. And I absolutely adore that. So.
And since we're talking about culture, the principles that you establish in a culture or in the business is really it really matters. Like, if you want to have the perspective of someone in the team like me, what you establish in your culture, maybe Lindsay and Julie, I know you're both team leaders. What you establish, what you always share with your team, it really impacts not just on a professional level, it also impacts on a personal level. Even I'm getting married this December, and I just wanted to mention Pao. He's my fiance, and he realized and he notices the changes in my behavior, in my perspective. I'm a little bit more positive right now. I'm a little bit more I enjoy a lot while I'm working, and I easily get up. I don't feel burdened by the day or what I'm gonna be working on. So I think it's also because of the 5x5 that David has taught me. And since we're talking about the principle, it's not necessarily that David taught me the 5x5. It's saying it's more of he's shown me, he led by example, that those principles really matter. And when you have that as a foundation, not just in the business but as well as in your personal life, it changes a lot. Even my fiance notices the changes in me, so that speaks a lot. That speaks a lot of volume in terms of the impact you're setting in the culture of your team and in your company. So I also say this. I also have my students. So on the sideline, I'm actually teaching college students. I handle advertising students, communication students. And one of the first things that I always say to them is, when you find someone you want to work with, or when you find a job or a company that you're going to be working with, the first thing that you should check is, number one, the culture and the value. Make sure that it's aligned with yours. And this is something that I learned in Cultivate Wins. I realized how important it is that I personally believe in the values that is the foundation of the team. And at the same time, I try my best to apply it in my life. And eventually it shows in all of the content that I create and all of the output that I create. I see myself doing the extra effort. I see myself becoming more comfortable with the network, with the people. Like, imagine someone far away from my home and I'm talking like this. So the opportunity and the empowerment that I'm having is really, really great. And I really want my students to realize that when they start working with someone, they have to know that the values they have personally also aligns with the people who they're going to be working with. So it doesn't just impact me, it impacts a lot of people here in the Philippines, especially my students.
So can I share on that? Because again, you're just saying things that are resonating with me. So when we talk about core principles, as a leader, this is just how I approach it. There are multiple ways to approach leadership. So part of what, Chrixy, I'm hearing you're experiencing is because you know this phrase out of me, because I say it on a fairly regular basis. Who I am sometimes is who I am all the time. Who I am sometimes is who I am all the time. As a leader, I think it's okay to sometimes rock the boat. And I'm just going to be real hardcore honest. There's a lot of coaching clients I have, and they talk about, okay, here's our mission, vision, value. And I say, okay, so what is your mission, vision, value? Because 9 times out of 10, I'm not impressed with hearing that they have a mission, vision, value, because most of them don't even remember what it is. So if I ask, okay, that's fine. Let's talk about your mission, vision, value if they want to start there. And this is what I usually see on a Zoom call. And what that is everybody looking at it like, do you know where we keep it? Do you know where it is? I think it's on our website. It might be in our operations manual. Where on the Google Drive is that? They don't, not only is it not a core of who they are, they're not even sure where to find it sometimes, okay? It's okay to rock the boat and just say, you know what, we have mission, vision, values, but let's be honest, they don't mean a hill of beans to us, and they don't affect every decision that we make. And I mean that hardcore. If you have a mission, vision, value, does it fully inform every decision you make, from your language to the products that you're going to develop to the systems that you have? So what we do, and what Chrixy is, from my perspective and my filter of what I'm hearing Chrixy has experienced, she knows that the core principles that I have are literally the same core principles in my marriage as what they are in my business. Hardcore. And what I would encourage any leader to do, the reason why I see a lot of value in that is, I think as a leader, if your core principles can work on a level that they will both work personally and professionally, you help your people. It's less exhausting. I don't need to be one person when I come into work and flip a switch. And then when I get home, I flip a switch and I'm something else for my life. Give them core principles that, quite frankly, would stand up against anything, both personally and professionally. So that is something that we're hardcore about here. It's not in theory, that's our reality. And so as a leader, I think it's okay to look at, we have mission, vision, values. Sometimes it's okay to say, do those really even mean anything to us? And it's okay to just ditch those. And it's okay to come up with something that's going to be a little bit more appropriate at the time. Sometimes those were created just because you read a book that said you got to have a mission value, okay? And so you thought that that was one of your steps to building a business. And as a small business owner, a lot of people think that that's one of the steps that they need to have to build a business. I don't really care if it doesn't hold water and it doesn't fully inform. And that's the phrase I think that Chrixy has probably heard me on a number of things is it going to fully inform everything? Okay. When we talk about peace, contentment, joy, gratitude, and compassion, give me a break. I'm talking about business. I'm also talking about my marriage. Do those things fully inform both everything personally and professionally? So I'm kind of a little over the top hardcore on that stuff, but but I think, Chrixy, hopefully you've experienced some of that in your first 7 months. That's not talk. That's our reality.
I think Julie wants to share something. She raised her hand in the chat box.
David, I would use mission, vision, value interchangeably, but I'm hearing you use them in ways that are differentiated. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to that at all. And I'm also wondering, when you take new people into hire or into a team, how do you suss out whether there is a philosophical alignment with what your mission, vision, values are?
Yeah, and I love that. So here's a lot of times if someone is, because I do have organizations that I work with where it just seems like it's part of their culture that they really believe they need to have a full-blown 3 separate mission, vision, value. And that's the way that they've been brought up. That's the way the organization has always existed, everything else like that. And sometimes what we will do is, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with having a mission, vision, value, as long as it's thoroughly used and it's practical for their day-to-day decision making. And it really does fully inform everything. Sometimes what we're going to do on those mission, vision, values, we are going to clearly just define what is the difference between the mission. So the first thing that we're going to do is just kind of take a step back and define what each one are. And sometimes we're actually, I think the goal, they think that they have to have all 3. And I think that's sad. And the reason why I think that's sad is because sometimes they're very clear on what their mission is. Sometimes they're very clear on what their vision is. Sometimes they're very clear on just what their value or even just a value proposition is going to be. And sometimes it's okay just to take a baby step. I think where a lot of people have trouble in an organization is I tell a lot of people that my personal recipe for failure is know where you are, know where you want to be, and start at the finish. Okay. And so what they will do is they know where they are and they know where they want to be. So they get all that done. Okay. Here's the thing is that doesn't interest me as much as because what happens when you start at the finish, when stress happens, when there's tension, what we do, if those things aren't fully informed and fully integrated into you, you default to where you were before anyways. And so sometimes what we're going to do in an organization, and I'm going to slow them down and say, so if we know where we are, we know where we want to be. The goal is not to get here, because if the goal is here, every day that we're not there, we think we're failing. And if we think we're failing, that's not a happy place to be every day, all day long. Every day to really have it thrown in your face that you are failing isn't helpful to me. So what we do is, rather than saying, here's where we are, here's where we want to be, and we're going to start at the finish, our goal isn't to be at the finish. The goal is every day, did we do something to move in that direction? So the goal is today, did we move in that direction? Now, here's the beautiful thing is if I do that 5 out of 7 days, I have 2 great days. Don't we kind of show up some days we're just not our best version of ourselves? So I fell down on Wednesday and I just didn't do a great job, but Thursday and Friday looked great. 4 out of 5 days, we were winning. Okay. So I'm creating mini wins all along the way. So sometimes it depends on the organization. The one that typically ends up being a good place to start, a lot of people, they can actually come up with their values and their value propositions first before a mission, vision, value. A couple of them, the mission is first. And what we'll do is we're going to see what actually resonates with them first, and let's kind of grow that out. Now, after we've used that, maybe for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and it's really become part of their culture, okay, how would that inform what the other 2 are? And we'll start building them out slower. And I think in an organization, they just think that they have to start at that finish line and get them all done within one whatever workshop sitting or anything else like that. And quite frankly, I see that it really has nothing to do with their culture 30, 60, and 90 days later. So that's kind of the way I separate them and then how I would work towards achieving those. And I think you get better buy-in as a leader. You get better buy-in from your team if you're not asking them. When we didn't have a mission, vision, value yesterday, okay, we have one today, and trying to get full buy-in that's literally internal for every one of them tomorrow, because now we have it. Okay, let's just live with our vision for a little while, or let's just, whichever one that they come up with, I get better buy-in because now we're seeing how to integrate that every day. Now, how does that inform what our mission would be, or how does that, so that type of thing. So that's kind of the way that I look at mission, vision, value a lot of times. I hope that helps.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please.
In terms of creating the mission, vision, values, and maybe communicating it with the team, I think it's really important because I've had a lot of experience where I've just been given tasks to do, and some deadlines and a little bit of instructions which aren't really that enough. So I really struggle in terms of creating that output. And I'm a person who asks, why do I need to do this? And sometimes I get a lot of traction in terms of why do I need to answer your question? And in a sense, as a creative person, I need to know why I need to do this so that I need to know how best to do it. So I think communicating your vision, mission, and the values to the team who are working for the business is really important if you really want a quality output, an impactful output that actually communicates why your business exists in the first place. So how do you think a team or a person like me in the marketing can create an output that fits the business if I don't know why the business exists, or what you want the business to be, or what it offers to people? So I think it's really important how you communicate it as well, like sharing it that this is our vision, not necessarily this is my vision and you need to push forward it. So it has a lot of impact, and the level um, of influence it has on an output really does make a difference.
So I'll share, kind of going back to the beginning where I'd said I want to hit a few key points of my terms on just kind of my thoughts on leadership. I'm going to integrate, kind of jump back to that based on this conversation right here, which is if I had one more thing to share, what I would end up sharing, just to do a screen share here, I would share this. We've kind of talked about this. This is really the core of kind of who I am, both in my marriage and in my business. Hardcore is. So here's the reason why I wanted to bring this up is what Chrixy, what you were just saying is you want, and the word that I'm going to use on a regular basis, clarity. Okay. You're looking for clarity. Okay. So I think sometimes as leaders, what I'm going to encourage people to do as leaders, create a culture where when someone needs to ask you something, someone needs to maybe even challenge you on something, can you create a tool that gets rid of fear and intimidation? Because I think as leaders, whether we like it or not, no matter how approachable we think that we are, if we have someone that they feel that they are whatever, they are less than, okay? The fact is it's okay just to admit that maybe you are approachable to your family, maybe you are approachable to your friends, but this is someone that you're paying a paycheck to and they don't want to put that at risk and they don't really want to challenge you. So if you can create an environment where they're never feeling that they're challenging you, what they're doing is simply seeking clarity against the standards that you have said we set. So if I ask Chrixy to do something, she never has to feel that she's challenging me or have the fear of challenging me. She can literally say, hey, David, I would love to get that done. Can you help just bring a little clarity because there's something I'm missing? Can you help bring a little clarity as to what you just asked me? How is that actually scalable? David, do you mind if I'll get that done, but before I start jumping into it, is there any chance that you could bring a little clarity how that's going to bring peace, contentment to our clients or even to us? Because I'm sure you've got a reason behind it. I need a little clarity around that because that's going to help me put together out a better product. Okay. Chrixy would never have to feel that she's questioning me or challenging me. I've just created an environment where anybody can just say, David, do you mind just giving me a little clarity on how that produces this? Because that'll probably change the way that I move forward on it, and it'll probably change the end output. Okay. So as a leader, when we talk about mission, vision, value, or core principles, can you put them together? Now, when Julie, you were asking about kind of that mission, vision, value type things, that's where I find value in them. And I see that organizations aren't using them. They're almost more, I hate to even admit this for so many organizations, but I think the mission, vision, value is almost more for the customer to see. It's almost more marketing. Okay. I want to know, is it actually something that the organization can use as a tool each and every day to fully inform every action, every thought process, and every decision that's made? And then also, does it help reduce the fear that anybody on the staff would have of their leadership, because they can just, anything that they're asked of, they can just say, you know what, can I just ask real quick for a little clarity on how that's going to produce X compared to this? Lindsay? I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of questions,
Go for it.
kind of piggybacking off of Julie, of how you introduce your 5x5, and then
Mhm.
also how you make sure that Chrixy and your other team members are on board with those things,
Yeah.
especially during the interview and just in the general onboarding. Because I know you've got your 5x5, but you also have like your Augmentito and all those other things that are your values and your principles, right? That you talk about with your team all the time.
Yep.
So the 5x5, I feel like that's pretty simple as far as it makes sense for business, and
Mhm.
most people can get on board with that pretty quickly. But when you start talking about your books and the other philosophies that you
Yes.
live by
Love
and who
that.
you are,
Yes.
how do you introduce the team to that? Do you say, hey, you're coming on the team, you have to read this book, or is it kind of a slow thing? How does that progress?
100%, Lindsay, as you can imagine. I want to dive in and answer that. And you know, I have an answer for that, but I want to hold back because who cares about my perspective? Come on, Chrixy. How did you hear about or have any of these things introduced to you? I don't even know what the answer is going to be, but I'm real curious. How did you even find out about these? How did they get introduced? And how did you actually, or when did you feel like they were introduced and that they actually were something that had value? They were non-negotiables for me.
Well, I think I mentioned a while ago that it wasn't necessarily taught to me. Yes, it was presented, and David, he's very organized and he wants everything predictable. So he created a document about all of the core values, the 5x5, and a little bit of sharing on why it matters and why these are non-negotiable. So he just shared it with me without any expectation that, or he wasn't really pushing that, hey, you have to integrate this in your lifestyle right now. So he just wanted to share that this is what Cultivate Wins is at the moment. And I think he left it to me and didn't really get back to me on, hey, what's your feedback, or how are you going to work on this? So it, in terms of how or why I'm saying that it was shown to me, it's because on a daily basis he mentions it like numerous times, even when we're chatting. It's a real proof when he says that who he is all the time. Who he is sometimes is who he is all the time. Because in webinars, in coaching, in lessons I edit, in our chats, and in our fun times, like when we bug each other and just talk about family, he mentions his 5x5. He mentions Augmentino, he mentions his scriptures. And I think that really matters in repetition. Um, Consciously or non-consciously, when you always say it and always integrate it in a conversation without the pressure of actually saying that, hey, you should also do this, the other person opens up. So that's what happened to me. I opened up to David and I got curious what those 5x5 are, and I actually read one of the book recommendations that he has, The Greatest Salesman. And it made me cry, and I was like, this is David's fault. I was in a I was in a salon and I was reading the book and I was crying because I knew the context and how it's being used on a
Yeah.
real life basis. And when I read how deep it was and how much more I can dig deep into this, it touched my heart. And that's basically saying a lot in terms of how he has an influence in my life. And I'm ordering some of the other book recommendations he has. And even my friend Jeannie, she's read like 5 of David's recommendations already. Oh yeah. David has a fans club here in the Philippines. That's how much impact he has. And that's how he shared the Cultivate Wins vision, mission, and values. He just shared it. He openly showed it to me, and he waited for me to like accept it in a sense that, okay, I'm ready to know what this is all about. And then eventually it also trickled down in how I'm living my life. So I think we should also give the people some grace and give them the freedom or the space to work on it on their own pace. You can remind them, you can ask them, you can always multiple times mention it, but don't ever expect that they'll have it in a snap, or don't ever expect like in this timeline you should already understand it and have it in your life. So we all have our own pacing, and it matters to get to know the person because you'll eventually have an idea on how long it will take them to fully integrate the vision, mission, and the culture. of the team. So I hope that
Well,
helped.
I'm going to tag off of that. And because I know, Lindsay, you know me well and you know my language well. So I'll put it in my language is this. It needs to be freakishly practical. You know me well enough. I mean, that's exactly what everything is to me. The practical side of real estate, the practical side of your core values, the practical side of your mission, vision, value. If it isn't practical, you're not using it every single day. My interpretation of what I just heard from Chrixy is I presented, and I don't even have to present real heavy. I can present lightly that we have these core principles. We have the core principles of the 5x5. We have the core principles of the 10 scrolls, and we have the core principles of the 4 agreements. These are a couple of our core principles. Now, because they are freakishly practical, I knew how I was going to teach her how we use those and how important they are to us, because they are not, and again, I'm looking at other organizations that I've been a part of and others that I've coached. They know that there's this mission, vision, value. And I really believe it's held up above and away from the organization 9 times out of 10. The only thing that we use in our organization is what we can apply on a day-to-day realistic basis. So I can mention the 5x5, I can mention the 10 scrolls, I can mention the four agreements. And to say that they don't come out of my mouth in almost everything that we talk about, why even have them if you can't have practical daily use? So everything that we talk about, they're almost addressed. So that's where I would kind of go back to that mission, vision, value, that some companies have them, but it may not become a daily practical use. Is if I had a mission, vision, value, that mission, vision, value would actually be part of our daily language. Okay. And it isn't like we just start our meeting. And I did have an organization where that was how they kind of ingrained the mission, vision, value. Every morning, everybody stands up and they actually all together out loud, which for me just felt weird, is everybody saying it out loud, especially when we went to Zoom, because we had organizations, Minnesota, New York, Louisiana, Pennsylvania, Florida, a couple others, and we're all on Zoom, and the audio is not synced at all. So it sounded like just complete garbage for 62 people to be saying this mission, vision, value together. I couldn't get through it if my life depended on it, okay? But here's the thing, we all couldn't wait until we were done saying it so we could just get to the meeting. No, it's never going to get talked about again. It's not in my daily life. So I will mention this if this helps anybody. I'll show you in real time my calendar. So I would suggest this is something that I would suggest that someone does. What I do is she has access to my calendar as well. Okay. And when we look at my calendar, okay, my calendar, when you've got a Google Calendar, you can't believe how much stuff you can put in the description. It's crazy talk. Okay. So what we do is not only is it's all about practicality, Lindsay, that it is part of every conversation that we have on everything that we develop and everything that we do. So I make whatever our mission, vision, value, and cores are, that they're part of our daily language in every activity. So she knows, here's a couple things. Number one, our core values, here's my 10 scrolls. Here's my 4 agreements, okay? So I review them every Tuesday and Thursday. And then what I do is all my verses that are important to me are down here. And I make sure that my team knows that these things are on our calendars and they're always there if you ever just need to reference them. The other things that I do, I put my own quotes of what I know, because I know I'm freakishly predictable. I say the same things over and over again. So I actually put my own quotes in here because here's my philosophy on this. If I read this over and over again multiple times per day and it annoys me, if it annoys me, how much do you think it annoys everybody else? So I even challenge my own words. Okay, so everything's about practicality for me. So she had them presented to her, but the key is she actually hears about them and sees them every day. It's not about a deep dive presentation every day. Is your core principles and is your mission and value something that's integrated into everything that you do? That's the level of practicality I'm looking for as a leader. Otherwise, how do I really get that integrated into anybody's soul? Does that help? Okay.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
So you guys talked about how Chrixy sends you some photos over the weekends. I know I send you some photos over the weekends. When you're working with team members globally,
Yes.
and especially with COVID, and we're all in completely different atmospheres, some people are still kind of locked down a little bit. How do you have those conversations and send pictures without kind of bragging on about being in America and stuff? It's just a touchy subject that I'm not good at being sensitive to those kind of things at all. So it's just a question that I have.
Chrixy, how would you approach that?
It never
How would you
really,
feel
well, I have my biases, and well, knowing David, it's like an automatic reaction. I never felt like he was bragging. It was more like he was sharing his story, and maybe it was about how he presented it. Like he wanted me to be a part of the experience, especially when the grandbabies arrive and stuff like that. Like his celebration, he wanted to share the happiness with me. That's how it felt. It was never like I'm here and you're there. So it number one, maybe it's because of the personality, and number two, the approach that he was sharing it. And number three, he was always telling me to share some stories myself. So it should always be two-way communication and two-way sharing. So even the wackiest photos, I'm so comfortable and confident that David won't be angry at me. So I send it to him.
And Chrixy sends me photos of her eating a lot. I mean, there's a lot of food shoved in her face when she sends me photos. So here's my side of it, Lindsay, is the fact is that, compassion is a major, major, major topic for me. It's not something that I take passively. So when I'm going to reach out to her, I have compassion that for this to be received well by her, there's probably, for me anyways, anybody else could take a different perspective. For me, I believe compassionately, I should at least do one of two things. The way I'm presenting it should actually be done in a way that shows gratitude towards her or is approached with humor. Now, what would that look like? When I'm going to share a picture with her or do something like that on a Wednesday afternoon, okay? The fact is that what we do is the second and fourth Wednesday of every single month, I have no coaching clients and my wife has the day off. So we play hooky, okay? And David plays hooky from work. And what Chrixy does is she does whatever it takes. She'll even, either not reply to me or tell me to stop messaging her at 3 o'clock if I message her at 3 o'clock because I'm supposed to be hanging out with my wife playing hooky, okay? So what I might do is I might send her a picture, say, of Dina and I on Wednesday afternoon, and it's not bragging, hey, look, I get all the free time in the world. It's a gratitude thing. Hey, by the way, Dina and I are at the falls right now, and that wouldn't be a reality if you weren't helping me to make that a reality. I'm grateful for that. Okay, those types of things. Then it might be she just gets a picture of Squirrel, and Squirrel's got a question for her, or something to that extent. But it's you have to take a look at what is your personality and what works for you, but what also is going to work for them. I don't always care what works for me because it's not always about me. So for me to show and to have compassion for her, just trying to be as self-aware and aware of my surroundings and the people around me, I believe that's something that works well with Chrixy, is to show her real gratitude because it's very real. And then also, she's crazy funny. So if I don't throw a little humor in there, I'm not keeping up with her. I mean, it's just plain and simple. That's all there is to it. So that's kind of the way that I hope that helps answer it. It never comes across as bragging. I look at what she relates to and I care about that. So that's how I present it. Okay, cool. Well, I don't want this to go any longer. It's a fun conversation. And again, because we're talking about leadership, I believe my style of leadership is to empower people, not to demand, not to do any of those types of things. And so today was an example. I didn't know what she would share, okay? And she didn't need to approve anything through me, is I am a self-proclaimed control freak. And so as a leader, one way that I have empowered her is that I have to put myself in check because I'm a control freak, is when I know that I've asked her to do certain things, sometimes she'll say, hey, by the way, do you want to review this and approve this? And I've even put myself in check and saying, oh my gosh, I want to recruit. I want to look at every inch of it so bad, but I need to empower her. So it'll kill me, my soul just a little bit, but then I'll pause for a moment and then I'll reply to her and go, nah, you got this. And then I hit send and I'm like, oh, what did I do? Okay, because that's not me. I'm a control freak. I want to look at everything. I want to approve everything. Here's the thing is though, I either trust her or I don't trust her. And I either do that and I show that through my actions or I don't. Okay. At some point, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? It doesn't come out exactly the way that I want. Great. We can meet about it, talk about how we might want to do it next time or whatever. Okay. Nobody's going to die. Okay. I feel a little bit of death every time I hit send. But, you know, the deal is that that's part of it. As a leader, know when to pull back as well, and just empower your people. And that's what I kind of wanted to do on this session today, where I usually am going to do the full hour. I wanted to empower her to share really what her experiences were. And I found it a great perspective because we've just kind of started to work together. And so this is raw. This is new. This is fun for me to even hear. A little scary going into it, but it turned out okay. It's just fine. It's just fine. Chrixy, anything on the way out?
Well, I actually had the note while we were talking. I wanted to acknowledge that it wasn't easy for David, especially because we just met and we don't really personally meet, like physically meet. We just talk on video calls. We just chat most of the time. So how do you expect a person to trust easily someone who he doesn't meet on a regular basis? And we're like miles apart. So I really acknowledge and I totally am very grateful that he trusts me this much. But this is one thing that I want to share with all of the leaders. I know it's really hard. I know it's not easy, but I totally promise it's totally worth it. Like, it's not easy, but trust me, it's worth to empower your team, because it's not just going to benefit you. It's going to benefit your team at the same time, your business and the people that you're working with, your clients, the network. It's like a ripple effect that when you drop that stone, it ripples to a lot of people. So I know it's not easy, but it's worth it.
100% worth it. And from the self-professed control freak, I'll just tell you right now, get over the fact and don't say that's not the way I'm wired. Come on, give me a freaking break. I don't care how you're wired. Make decisions of what would be a better version of you. Be better and do better. Don't worry about whether it's a natural thing for you to lead this way. Look for better ways to lead. And even if they're not your natural inclination, treat them as a learned skill. Stop putting these attributes on a pedestal and just say, you know what? I can let go a little bit more. I can trust a little bit more, and I can empower a little bit more, and treat it as a skill and just start giving a little bit more empowerment to your people. I have a hard time believing that that won't benefit both them, you, your organization, and quite frankly, your customers.
Yeah.
So I hope that helps someone. I hope this was a fun call for you guys as well that joined us. All right, everybody have a great day. Chrixy, you and I are jumping on another Zoom call about something else after this, so I'm looking forward to that. God bless all of you. Love you, love you.
Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Bye.